All right, folks, welcome back to BEG Wrestling. We are here with none other than U.S. Freestyle head coach Bill Zadick, leading us into Paris 2024 Olympics. Coach Zadick, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
First
Thanks
thoughts, how's the team looking so far?
We're looking good, looking great. Really excited. About a week ago, just got back from Europe in Istanbul and qualified our remaining spots. So all 6 men's freestyle athletes competing. Spencer Lee at 57 and Zane Rutherford getting those last 2 spots qualified. So did a great job and really excited. And for those guys individually, but also the momentum it builds for our team and the other 4 athletes. You know, I think they look around and they're like, yeah, we're going to roll in here with some hammers. And so, yeah, very excited.
Well, you bring up an interesting point that I was going to ask you about, and that would be, like, what would you consider to be the most important aspect of your job? Because you mentioned the team camaraderie, but is it that, or is it technical, or is it mental? What would you consider to be the most important part?
Well, I think the biggest responsibility any head coach has, or any leader, whether you're running a company or you're a school teacher, is a culture you build in your environment. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's a big responsibility, although I wouldn't take all the credit, because each individual that's a part brings their own piece of that culture to the program. And so, I'm very fortunate that I have Joe Russell as a colleague, and he does amazing work for the U.S. national team, and all of our personal coaches and our regional training centers and all of our athletes, they all share in that. And so, but I do believe that's one of our most powerful strengths and asset to our program.
The camaraderie. Well, and you mentioned something interesting, because I was going to ask you about the evolution of the sport and how things have changed. And me being here and grateful for this opportunity, my first time, I mean, you see how as wrestling builds and grows, each wrestler is kind of becoming their own brand. And along with that brand, they come with their own coaches. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about maybe how that dynamic has changed over the course of years. And has that always been the case, or has there been something else that has maybe evolved during your time?
Yeah, no, the climate of wrestling and just sport culture in general has changed quite a bit, right? From, the 90s until now, the whole culture of society has changed, right? We're an electronic culture where everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a camera in their hand. Yeah. That 30 years ago, they weren't there. And so you have cinematographers and documentaries everywhere there is, right? So there's some greater responsibility with that that's brought to society, and there's maybe some unintended negatives. And so we are in a different culture and in a different world. And, as crazy as it sounds to me, I'm, 50 years old, 51. These kids that are on the team, most of them, they've never even experienced anything different, because, they're born after internet and, everybody having a video camera in your hand.
That's all they know.
Yeah, and then with, more recent things and specific to sport, NIL, and what that's brought to our world. Brand building is important. In me as an individual and us as a staff, I think we want those things for our athletes, right? And as fans, sure. Right? Yeah. We know how hard wrestling is, right? And it's not a mainstream sport yet. It's not the NFL. It's not the NBA. And we always kind of look across the aisle like, oh, it'd be nice to have that money.
Yeah.
But that money brings its own set of problems too. And as we're advancing and growing our resources and wanting to grow more opportunity for our sport, I think we got to look at it with balance. I want every opportunity for every athlete on our team, every financial resource, every life experience opportunity. But we want to stay balanced, right? And we want to stay balanced with things that really matter the most, which are our relationships and what do they as individuals want to accomplish. And if we don't get caught up with, getting involved in the resource side of it, I can help.
Yeah.
I can help, right? I can help them improve. I can help them accomplish what they want to do. It's really driven by them as individuals. I have experience and I have information that might be advantageous. And if I can plug that into where they want to go, maybe that helps generate more opportunity, more resource for them. And that's I feel like that's a great place for me to be.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about that change, so is that something that maybe you've incorporated into coaching, is literally handling and dealing with media and the social media part of it?
Well, yeah, specific to an Olympic Games, there's a lot more hype and there's certainly a lot more media attention. Not that there isn't at the World Championships, but probably significantly less. So it is something we address. It's something we talk about, so that we can manage it ahead of time, or at least manage expectation. And then you deal with whatever comes about, right? You kind of play the cards you're dealt, and if there's things that are unexpected, you make decisions on the fly. But staying focused on your philosophy and your people and your process is going to help guide those decisions and guide you through that, the attention and the hype. And it's also going to help you make choices on the fly when unpredictable things happen. You're going to at least give you the best opportunity.
Yeah, I would trust your preparation for that. Is there a favorite Olympic moment that you have during your coaching or even wrestling career?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite Olympic moment as a coach, because you really develop a relationship with all your athletes, and everyone means so much to each individual and each family, right? Because wrestling's an individual sport, but it isn't, right? We cannot elevate ourselves or anyone else to that level without the support of our family, without the support of our training partners, without the support of our coach. So now all these guys that achieve at a super high level, they have to make those choices on their own, but they can't do it on their own. And so it's really hard to isolate one. One thing that I think about for me is, where do we derive our inspiration? And when I started wrestling, my dad was very passionate about the sport, and he instilled that passion in me and in our family, my brother, and my sister's mom, for that matter, too. So we drove in 84, when I was a young kid. I was 11. We drove from Montana, where I grew up, down to LA for the Olympics. Okay. And so I had a pretty cool moment watching the games happen, watching our team did phenomenally well, and watching the Olympic champions. So I remember a moment seeing Dave Schultz win the gold medal, watching Randy Lewis win the gold medal, other gold medalists too, right? Mark Schultz and the Bannocks and Bruce Baumgartner. But that was a very inspirational moment that I was already thinking that way, but it really kind of cemented things, like, man, this is what I want to do. I want to do that. And so that's pretty...
Well, I'm glad that you kind of got into it, because I was going to ask you, and it's one question I've been asking everyone, is how did you initially get into wrestling? Because I think maybe the youth wrestlers out there, if they hear the stories firsthand, they could appreciate it and maybe allow themselves to see an introduction into the sport of wrestling. But you mentioned you grew up in Montana. Your brother, also a wrestling coach. I hear he's starting a club out there. Yeah, Mike is building a club, building an academy. It's called Benchmark Wrestling. It's really a total wellness type center. Center of excellence is kind of his vision. Our father passed away 3.5 years ago. One of his former businesses was a car dealership, and when that property sold, it was deconstructed, and my brother kept all the structural steel. And it really was like a second home to us.
So it's kind of hard to see it go, right? I knew it was the right choice, but like our house was 3 blocks away from the business. So we get out of school,
wow.
and all of us as kids, my 2 sisters and my brother and I, we'd go over to the dealership, and we did all sorts of things, right? I mean, we worked as lot boys and girls, and we'd clean the lot, and we'd wash cars and detail cars and do odds and ends, and probably one of the most iconic things for us was we had a rope in the back, right, climbing rope, and we'd go every day, get home from school, I'd go climb the rope 10 times, right? But we always climbed 11 because everything in the Zadick household you did 1 extra for good measure. And that was just kind of the values and that were instilled in us through our mom and dad, right? And so when the business sold, my brother's like, he was living back home and decided he couldn't see that place go away just like that. So he deconstructed it, kept structural steel. A couple years after that, he bought a property and he moved the steel up to where he lives now, which is about an hour outside of our hometown.
Okay.
And he's reconstructing the building and turning it into this wrestling academy and center of excellence. So,
Benchmark Wrestling?
Benchmark Wrestling.
Folks, so if you're out in Montana and you need to find a wrestling coach, that's where you're going to want to go.
If you're anywhere in the world, you can go to benchmarkwrestling.com and check out his website. And he's fundraising and permitting, and it's he's got a lot of momentum, and it's exciting, but it's a big project, so we need everybody's help.
Yeah. Coach, one thing I just want to say, and you touched on it earlier, how important the camaraderie was, and just this isn't even really a question, just a general observation that I've made. To me, fascinating to see how all these wrestlers compete against each other in college, and then to have them all come here into one place. And I mean, I see nothing but camaraderie. So, I mean, but you've had to have some challenging relationships in the past, at least, right? Or
I mean, you always have challenges, right? Whether you're in a college program or your own family, we have interpersonal dynamics. Mm-hmm. But for us, we try to keep focused on the rest of the world, right? We know that if you and I are both wrestling at the same weight class, at some point we're going to have to sift that out, right? Mm-hmm. But we stay focused on what we need to accomplish. You want to be the Olympic champion, and so do I. And we kind of keep our goals focused on that achievement, and then you and I will sift out which one, but that's kind of the start of it for us. It is challenging, but you want to build trust, and you want to build camaraderie, because those things elevate everybody in the room. And rising tide raises all ships. It's kind of a cliche, but it's also true.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for us, and important to me and our staff. And like I said, Coach Russell, Joe, he's a great people person. He's a bridge builder, and he's very humble and respectful, and usually the smartest guy in the room. And so he gets a lot of that credit. And like I said, previously, everybody that walks in the room has a share in that.
Yeah. Well, love the mindset. I love the culture. Is there anything, last words that you say to a wrestler, or any kind of motivational speech, words maybe, that I could maybe start telling myself before we go on our shows? Pump me up, or maybe not?
It's funny, I kind of don't have a big rah-rah pump up speech. I kind of it's a little bit paradoxical. Like, I do more rah-rah and pump up at our smallest events. In our big moments, I try to decompress those and reduce them down to just the simplest things. When you get to the Olympic Games, what really matters, what really impacts your destiny or your achievement or what you're going to do, is no different than the very first wrestling match that you ever had when you're 5 years old or 8 years old. It's just what happens inside that circle. So just try to look at it that way and be relaxed, so we make good decisions, and trust that we're going to be enough, right? We never have to be perfect. We just have to be enough, and trust that the work that you've done, the history that you've built, the success that you've had in the past is evidence that I'm pretty good at this thing, and there's probably a 99% chance I'm going to make the right choice when I encounter something unpredicted.
Yeah.
And just, yeah.
Well, Coach, this has been incredible, but I have one last question I want to ask you, okay? And it is completely wrestling unrelated. I want to know, tell us something about Coach Zadick outside of wrestling that maybe we don't know. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Well, I'm married, and my wife and I have 2 children. And I'm on the road quite a bit with wrestling, as you would imagine, and so I really enjoy being with my family, my wife and kids. I love the outdoors too, and growing up in Montana, we had a lot of that. And living in Colorado now, there's a lot of access to that. So when I get downtime, everybody says that, but until you have your own kids, right, it doesn't really connect. But you're like, well, you'll understand when you have your own. And the coolest few minutes of the day for me is I walk in the door and my kids go crazy for 2.5 minutes, screaming daddy and rolling around and playing, and that's the coolest thing I do.
You're raising them to be wrestlers, right?
Well, we'll see. Hopefully I'll raise them to be good, principled people, and then if they want to take that into wrestling, I'll be happy for that too.
Said best as the United States wrestling coach. Coach, thank you so much.
Hey,
best of luck in Paris. And I am very grateful for this opportunity. And I can't thank you again. So best of luck in Paris.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks.